Evening, everyone. Welcome to the presentation regarding the Behavior Support Review Committee, an informational meeting in Town Hall where you'll get a little brief overview of the Behavior Support Review Committee, what we do, how we do things, how it operates. And then, as Kat said, you'll have the opportunity throughout the presentation to put questions in your chat and direct them to everyone, please, so that we can get them as fast as possible. We'll hold the questions until the end and then start addressing those as quickly as possible. Those questions will generate a frequently asked question document that we will post to the website then within a short period of time. And that will be available for everyone. As Kat said, we are recording this, so want you to be aware of that. And we'll do some introductions. And good morning. I am Rita Cooper. I'm the Western Region Area Behavior Analyst, and I'm going to throw it off to Lucas Evans, our Chief Behavior Analyst.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lucas. Thank you all for coming today. It's amazing to see so many folks on the call, and I hope this is a helpful start of a new practice that we're going to do. So thank you all for being here.
All right, Melantha.
Good morning, everyone. I am Melantha Witherspoon. I'm the Eastern Area Behavior Analyst, and I'm so grateful so many people are attending.
We'll start then with Rod. Rod will be our moderator for the chat box. So Rod, please introduce yourself.
Good morning. My name is Rod Cowan. I'm your moderator and the Eastern Area Intensive Systems Consultant. Excited to be here this morning.
All right. Thank you so much. Rod's going to do an awesome job for us to keep us on track and in line with what we need to respond to. So next we'll go to Robert Smith.
Hi, everyone. I'm Robert Smith. I am the Central Area Intensive Systems Consultant.
Super. And now we'll go to Kay Hamblin.
Morning, everyone. I'm Kay Hamblin. I'm the Western Region Intensive Systems Consultant with Rita Cooper. Thank you.
All right. So we're going to get started and volley back and forth here a little bit with the presentation. So want to give you an agenda kind of outlining what we're going to do this morning. We'll have a brief overview of the Behavior Support Review Committee, its purpose, goals, and objectives, the committee members and how that operates, a little bit about the meeting, about the processes in regards to inviting people to the committee, and then we'll open it to those questions and answers. And remember, put those in the chat box if you could, and Rod will guide us along. So.
All right, so our purpose. The purpose of the Behavior Support Review Committee is to promote an implementation of best practice strategies that lead to a greater independence and enhanced quality of life for the individuals with challenging behaviors. So those are some huge words and some huge processes involved, and we know that you all understand those, and we know that that is one of our goals, and we hope it's your goal as well to support our individuals in the best way positive. We'd like to do that through seeing some positive supportive environment. There'll be some peer review and feedback within the committee. Again, we're promoting the implementation of best practice strategies, greater independence, and of course, enhanced quality of life. The overarching requirement is through 9 CSR 45-3.09, and Rita has attached a link here so that you can access that at any time. And our goals and objectives, again, and our strategies are scientifically based. We look for a least restrictive environment for our individuals. We looked at it, that everything is documented in the ISP and the BSP. And it's documented in the ISP through amendments, which are completed by, of course, the service coordinator and the team. And these goals also ensure that we meet the Medicaid waiver assurances. Again, that they're scientifically based, that there's ethical guidelines that we have to follow due to the BACB compliance code. And that those strategies are least restrictive. It's very important that we look at all of those indications for these individuals that we support. We do this through developing effectiveness of behavioral services, consultation and problem-solving assistance. The BSP will be reviewed, and then it's a peer review process with a checklist. So that's something that is very important to understand and recognize, is that the BSP is reviewed in the process, and we do go over it and look for measurements in there. And again, we use best practice strategies. So Ms. Rita is going to continue on with what our responsibilities are of our committee.
Great, thanks for that, Kay. So I want to go over the committee responsibilities, and we're going to start with the chair. And the chair is one of the area behavior analysts, and that's a licensed behavior analyst that's employed and appointed by the division. And that would be either Melantha or I, or we have a vacancy in the central region that we're hoping to fill. So those behavior analysts function as the chairperson. We also have a lot of activity as the chair, recruiting additional members, ensuring the members understand the process, identifying trends and patterns and concerns. And we do a lot of data analysis associated with the committee. We're developing communication protocols in order to communicate with the teams. We're providing technical assistance and expertise related to issues of assessment and processes, and helping with data collection ideas for individuals that present their plans. We're also responsible for behavior support review committee items outside of the region, and we'll take data to ensure that all committee functions are within the standards of the CSR. So the CSR is really our guiding document. There are a lot of other responsibilities that the chair take, and one of the things we will have is that we will have the manual that we developed on the website, so you can read it at your leisure. We're just here to give you an overview. The other really important part of the Behavior Support Review Committee that we're very pleased to have are our intensive systems consultants, and they're going to help to really keep us on track by notifying the teams about the need for plans to be reviewed. They're going to maintain a tracker and help us ensure that we're meeting our time requirements. They're also going to help us with that data collection and integrity part, and then help us with the IQMFD findings as they are identified. Another critical part of the committee and committee responsibilities are our committee members, and we wouldn't function without them. These are individuals who are part of the system that is within DMH, and they are all volunteers. They are BCBAs, BCABAs, or individuals who are acquiring their supervision hours with clinical oversight by a behavior analyst. The committee members are required to get the initial training to understand how to do the scoring and how the committee operates. And then our goal is to also have the opportunity to have quarterly trainings for the committee members, and then to enlist the support of other behavior analysts and new behavior analysts for the committee. So we're always interested in getting people to be part of the committee. So this is your eye chart for the day. And this is a lot better identified in the manual, and you can take a look at that there. We're really pleased to be able to at least map out the process for you. As you can see in the upper left-hand quadrant here, this defines the plans, prohibited practice, those that are higher risk based on monthly data, and then other opportunities, whether that's through referrals by regional offices, due process, by the team themselves. You know, those who are invited get a notice. Their plans are then required to be submitted. We take that plan material and redact it. We send it to our committee members for review. They receive it and score it in accordance with the checklist. And then this square here in the middle identifies the actual operation of the Behavior Support Review Committee meeting. During the meeting, there is a introductions, overview, the confidentiality information is identified. Then there is a 5 to 10 minute case presentation. The committee will ask clarifying questions. The team will, of course, respond to those. And then the committee provides recommendations and action steps to determine a follow-up plan. After that, within 5 business days, we get a summary out to the team that identifies the follow-up timeframes and the action steps needed. And when those action steps are completed, then the encounter for the Behavior Support Review Committee is concluded. If there are some findings that the team hasn't completed elements of the recommendations, then those will go into the IQMFD system, and then we'll address that through there. And the hope is that's a quick and expeditious process, and we conclude that encounter with the Behavior Support Review Committee. Now I'm going to hand this off to Kay, and she's going to tell you about when the meetings are and a little bit more information about the meeting process here in the middle.
Thanks, Rita. So our meetings right now are held 3 times a month. They are the second Tuesday in the morning. The group coming to the committee would be asked to come at either of these 3 times, 9, 10:15, or 11:30. So you're there about an hour, roughly, presenting and receiving guidance and receiving feedback. The next meeting would be the 3rd Thursday, and that's an afternoon at 1, 2:15, or 3:30, or the 4th Tuesday in the afternoon at 2:15, or 3:30. So those are the times currently set up. We're looking at adding another time, additional time in January of 2022. So just keep abreast to our emails and such that there will be another time added. If you have any ideas or any suggestions of times that are good for your agencies, you can certainly let us know that as well. So the actual meeting, as Rita said, was in the previous slide, in that square box there, and it kind of overviews what happens during the meeting. Presentation of the problems, presentation of solutions already tried, presentation of data collected, how to, if you don't know how to collect data, if this is your first time coming through, we may give you some suggestions of how to collect that data. You know, in each meeting, again, lasts about an hour, and there are times that you will be asked to come back for a follow-up meeting in 2 to 3 months. So we'll suggest trying something, or we'll suggest collecting some data that we would like to see you come back with in a few months to see how that's affected that behavior that is going on within your home or within the individual's home. So, all right. So Rita's going to talk about the actual referral process.
Great, thanks, Kay. And you know, the follow-up also could be by email or by phone, depending on what information is required. So, you know, it's not always a come back to the meeting. It's a come back and chat with us via email processes and phone conversations. So those are other options that we might suggest. So let's go on to that referral process. So the referral and who comes to the meeting is based on, as Kay previously mentioned, the overarching guidance is 9 CSR 45-3.090. And it outlines and defines that individuals with prohibited practices must be reviewed, individuals at high risk, and of course, as we mentioned a couple of times, it can be a self-referral. So I want to go into a little more depth about each of these and how those operate. So let's move on. So for prohibited practices, and like I said, the manual will be posted on the website, and we also will post 9 CSR 45-3.090, but of course we gave you the link for that also. The definitions of the prohibited practices, and one in particular, timeout, is included in that CSR. And as of July 1st of this year, we told the Medicaid, Medicare Services Division that we would no longer use seclusion timeout in what we do. And so that was a big break for us to have that Medicaid assurance. You know, we've had seclusion timeout, and the providers who have had that have worked very hard to change their practices and shift the paradigm of their organizations. And we are pleased with the work in progress that they've done and with the collaboration to achieve the goal of not having seclusion timeout in their practices. But just I want to read that definition real quick, just so you know. Seclusion timeout is the involuntary confinement of an individual alone in a room or an area from which the individual is physically prevented from having contact with others or leaving. This is sometimes referred to as a safe room or a calm room. And locked rooms using a key lock or a latch system not requiring staff directly to hold the mechanisms are, of course, prohibited. You know, seclusion timeout may be inadvertently executed by a staff because they might take the individual they're supporting to their room and kind of stand in the doorway until they calm down, and there are criteria. So, you know, some of those things we really have to watch to ensure that we don't inadvertently execute seclusion timeout. The other thing that's really important are the prohibited practices, and they're in section 5 under restrictive interventions in subsection C-7. The assurance is subsection then D, and it lists the prohibited procedures. You know, you guys can read, I'm not going to read through them, but they include things like mechanical restraints, the use of reactive strategies or restrictive interventions on a PRN basis or as needed basis. Some might include the use of law enforcement or emergency departments as a PRN basis, and those are prohibited practices. There are 16 prohibited practices identified, and of course they are based on the context of the situation and you know, what's going on with the individual. So please be sure to take the time to look at those and review those, because you know, lots of people have interactions with the individuals we support, the support coordinators, guardians, folks from a day program. So, you know, look at the environment, look at what's going on, and, you know, if there's a prohibited procedure, make sure that we know about it. The other thing is that watch what you're doing when you're incorporating things into plans, that you review that section of the CSR so you know what items are prohibited. And of course, anytime we find a plan with a prohibited practice, we will bump that up to the top of the list to review. So I'm going to talk briefly about the high-risk identifiers, and this particular infographic is on our website, but I want to identify for you what we consider those high-risk categories for individuals, and those are the elements that we look at when identifying people for review. So at the person level, we look for 3 or more reportable behavioral events in the last 90 days, a greater than 720 hours of staffing authorized, 10 or more psychotropic medication claims in the last 90 days, and the use of hospital or ER for behavioral reasons. So those are those high-risk identifiers for individuals. So I'm going to pass it off to Kay to talk a little bit about that last referral process, the self-referral.
So, thanks, Rita. So looking at that self-referral, who can refer to this committee? Well, as we say, it can be the individual themselves, because we have some individuals who are their own guardians, obviously. Anyone can. It can be a regional office staff. It can be the support coordinator. The provider maybe is looking for some assistance. Maybe it is the, it could be the behavior analyst because they're needing some assistance with anything that's going on with that individual or looking for services. So just know that we accept referrals from anyone within the DMH system. And it's very important that you all feel comfortable coming to this group and asking questions, and not always, as Rita indicated, you have to come to a meeting. Maybe there are some other things that can be worked on without coming to the meeting. So just be aware that we're equal opportunity servers, shall we say. We allow all. That pretty much concludes our presentation for today. So what we're going to do is we're going to allow those questions that have come into the chat box now that Rod has filtered out for us to be read and asked and answered by this group. And we will, as Rita indicated earlier, we will record these questions and we will post a frequently asked question document to the website for you to review at a later time, for you to maybe go into greater understanding of what this committee does or how it functions, or maybe you're someone who would like to be on the committee and you'd like to know what it takes to belong to this committee. So again, we thank all of you for attending today. Please stick around for the frequently asked questions because we never know what's going to come up. We never know what you're going to learn. Thanks again.
Oh, thanks so much, Kay. So, and as Kay said, we're going to pass it off to Rod to kind of moderate those questions and volley them to the panelists. And so take it away, Rod.
All right, and we already have some questions in the chat box, so thank you all for putting those in there. So the first question, it's, this is awesome. Maybe this manual is even life-changing. So where do we access the manual? Now, I may have embellished that just a little bit, but Lucas, do you mind answering that question? Where can we access the manual?
That is a great question, and you can access it on our website. So you should be able to go to our Tier 3 page and you should be able to find it there. It'll be under one of the pancake menus. So once you visit that site, you'll see there's little carrots on the side that you can click and it will expand, and you should be able to locate it on that page, which will be provided in the FAQ after this call.
And I see another one. This next question comes from Fred. And Fred, I love this because not only is it a question, but it's an idea. So Fred says, good morning. So good morning, Fred. I know at times BCBA and ABA services are scarce in areas of the state. So I've thought about an idea that could possibly help regarding some additional resources by seeing if colleges and universities could be incorporated into helping our consumers, since the BCBA students would need hours required for their practicum, and they could assist in providing services with the oversight of a licensed BCBA. So I think that's a really good question and a great idea. And I'm going to pass that to Rita. So first, what do you do if services that are recommended aren't available in the area? And then what do you think about Fred's idea?
Well, thanks so much for volleying that to me, Rod. You know, we try to access as many resources as possible. First, to address what if there aren't resources available in the area and the person needs a behavior analyst or behavior services. So, you know, we help the team first to make sure that they have some of those necessary universals in place, that they're following the positive behavior support curriculum that the agency has. We'd also take a look at ensuring that one of the critical elements that the CSR recommends is that there be a safety crisis plan, and that the safety crisis plan has all the elements that are there, that the safety crisis plan is executed with integrity, and ensuring that the goals and objectives in that plan are measurable and observable, and that they have a system then to evaluate the process. So, you know, the other thing we could do is, you know, we're going to take a look at finding suitable alternatives. You know, maybe we have to reach a little further out of what our standard geographic bubble is to another area. You've got to consider this as, you know, a health issue concept. You know, if a person had cancer, they would go to a place to get that service to help with their chemotherapy, to help with their process of addressing their cancer. So addressing the behavior service needs of an individual is no less important. So we might take a look at how we can get services in, you know, although it might not be what the team would want to hear, but you know, is there a better place that that individual might live so they can get the services that would help address their needs? And then to kind of address the other portion that Fred had asked about BCBA students and how we can use them, you know, that's a great concept. You know, we have all considered, how do we get additional services and supports for remote areas? And of course, with the pandemic, we had the opportunity to use telehealth processes and remote monitoring of individuals with technology. So those are options to actually have individuals provide services to individuals in our care is probably out of the scope of what we could do right now, because those services could be or should be acquired through Medicare, Medicaid, or through the waiver. But, you know, we look at things a little outside the box, and, you know, that's something I think for a long-term solution to potentially look at and see what we can do, whether those folks might be under some of the folks at the HAB centers who are BCBAs, or, you know, an internship. We're always looking for creative ways to develop new BCBAs and to give them a variety of experiences. And I'm going to defer to my associates. Lucas, of course, as the chief behavior analyst, as you know, we've got a whole bunch of ideas rolling around, I'm sure. And Melantha, to maybe add to that, please.
Sure, I'll add to it. So it already is the case that students who are in program and getting experience can provide services to folks in our system, so long as they're meeting all their program requirements and the BACB requirements for supervision, supervised practice. That's part of how they become a fully licensed behavior analyst. So that absolutely is a possibility, and we have encouraged and support providers right now that are currently practicing to take on students in that capacity for that very reason, because it serves two benefits. It grows the field and it increases immediate capacity. So we totally support that, and we're open to agencies out there that provide service that would like to discuss further about how to go about doing that. So we agree, Fred. We think that's a fantastic idea.
All right, another question. And Melantha, this one, I think you're going to have the brilliance on this one. It's kind of a two-part question. First, it is, how much data should a provider bring to the meeting? And I think that aligns with what happens if one of my plans is selected to be reviewed in committee.
Thank you, Rod. Those are great questions. So I think it's helpful for committee members to have graph data, and sometimes the time frame in which we'll be looking at graph data may vary. It just depends on how long the ISL provider has been collecting specific data, and it depends on how long the ABA provider has been in place. I think what's important to highlight here is what kind of data we want to look at. And so we would love to see data on the problem behavior. We would love to see data on the replacement behavior. We would love to see data related to implementation. All of those things would be awesome for the committee to look at. If both the ISL provider and the ABA provider have been collecting data for 3 to 6 months, that would be appropriate to look at all of those things that I highlighted graphed. I hope that answers your question. And if there is also a reinforcement program, we would love to see if they're earning the reinforcers. And then the second question was, I'm sorry, I forgot it.
No, that's fine. What happens if one of my plans is selected to be reviewed for committee?
Great. That's another great question. The team will get a notification if the plan has been selected for review. Specific documents will be requested. The committee chairperson will access those documents. They will redact them. Those documents go out to the committee members, redacted for review. At the meeting, there's introductions of the committee members as well as the team. The team has about 5 minutes to share an update on how the person is doing. The committee members will ask clarifying questions. Then the committee will share recommendations. All of this information is documented on a feedback form. After recommendations are given, most of the time the team is made aware if we're going to request them to come back, or if the follow-up will consist of a call or an email. That follow-up form with all of the recommendations and a summary of the meeting will go out to the team, and follow-up occurs after that. So that's pretty much the process.
Thank you, Melantha. This next question, this is a really good question, Richard, and this may be for all panelists. The question is, ideas for non-restrictive ways to promote physical distance within day programs.
So this is Lucas. That's a really great question, and a fantastic discussion point to be had in that peer review meeting. we're not gonna provide suggestions today just because that falls outside the scope of what we want to talk about today. But that definitely is something that would be worthy of spending some time among professional peers talking about what other behavior analysts have done or what the literature or the research would support to do, because that would be a good question to get answered. We're not going to answer it here though.
All right, thank you, Lucas. This next one kind of speaks toward prohibited practice, and I know, Lucas, that's something that you can answer quite well. So the question is, how do we get an agency to take a client when restrictive practice are occurring in the home? Trying to take away those practices while the client is still in the home and there is no agency is almost impossible.
So let me kind of repeat what I think the question is. So the question is about how do we get agencies to accept somebody who needs to move, and also a question about how to get agencies to stop using prohibited practices.
Well, how do we, yeah, sure. How do we get an agency to take a client when restrictive practices are occurring in the home?
Yeah, that's a great question. And again, outside the scope of what we're going to talk about today, that would be a fantastic thing to problem solve in the peer review meeting at the Behavior Support Review Committee. I will go ahead and just break my rule, but I would imagine that part of the comprehensive planning that should be happening when people get ready to move should provide some input on what to do in that situation, as should the guidance of hopefully the behavior analyst who's providing assistance. And then again, that's the perfect conversation to have among a group of professional peers that have experience with those situations.
While we're on that topic, Lucas, would you mind going over a little bit, what are some of those prohibited practices?
Excellent question. Yep, I would love to. So essentially, prohibited practices, which just as a reminder, have been kind of outlined for a very long time for the division. We've had some somewhat recent additions to it, but the list, the major parts of the list have been in place for a very long time, probably a decade at this point at least, and probably longer than that. But essentially, anything that you do to cause pain to the person on purpose to try to resolve a problem situation is prohibited. That includes moving people in ways they're not meant to move, like hyperextending joints. It also includes when you restrain people on the ground manually, either in a supine or a prone position, so on the back or on the belly. Those are prohibited. Any mechanical restraints are prohibited and have been for a very long time. This includes things in addition to what people generally think about with mechanical restraints, which is like posy restraints on the limbs. It also includes turning off mechanical wheelchairs. So if a person has a motorized wheelchair and you disable it from the back and they can't re-enable it and they can't move, that is considered to be a mechanical restraint because you've taken away their mechanism for moving and you're not physically standing there holding them. So that's prohibited. And if you relocate them to an area they can't leave from and nobody else is in that area, it may also be exclusion timeout. So that may be too. Also, using punishment or anything for staff convenience, or using another consumer to implement a person's behavior support plan. Those are all prohibited practices. Using law enforcement as a standard practice to address problem behavior is a prohibited practice as well. That doesn't mean you can't call the cops if there's a legitimate emergency, but that shouldn't be your standard practice to address a person's problem behavior, and you absolutely cannot have it in that person's individualized plan, whether that be a safety crisis plan, an ISP, or a behavior support plan. That cannot be your go-to strategy for those situations. Locking people in their house for the purpose of keeping them there is also considered a mechanical restraint. That's another one of those categories that fall under mechanical. Things that are not prohibited is if a person needs a device to help them with their posture or balance or movement, so it's a functional support device, that's not considered to be a mechanical restraint. Things that are required to immobilize limbs to promote healing, like a cast, would not be considered a mechanical restraint. I think those are the major ones. Rita or Melantha, did I miss any?
I think you've covered most of them. Another one just happens to be overcorrection strategies.
Yep.
And then the other one is enclosed cribs or barred enclosures, which
Oh,
are.
yes, thank you. That is that's a
Really
special type of
significant.
mechanical restraint that we need to make sure we mention. Yep. So cribs or enclosed cells, for lack of a better word, are prohibited. Yeah, thanks, Rita, for mentioning that.
Yep, other than that, you got them all there. Lucas, thank you so much. That's such a comprehensive outline of what those prohibited practices are. So anything else, Melantha?
Not that I can think of. I think he covered everything.
All right, we'll pop it back to Rod because I bet there's more questions in the chat box.
There is, and this is a good one because earlier you talked about the forms that need to be submitted. What kind of things do we need to come to the committee with when we attend? But what if there isn't a BSP? Can the plan still be reviewed? And I know Rita, you can speak on this one.
Yes, I'd love to talk about that, Rod. You know, a BSP is an element that we would like to see, but we take a look at the ISP with a critical eye. And we, of course, go through the process of clarifying questions, and we make recommendations based on the information that's in the ISP. There may be other elements of the ISP implementation plans, a safety crisis plan. So we'll definitely give feedback on the elements of the ISP and perhaps recommend that behavior services be obtained for the individual. So thanks, Rod.
Sure, and hold on the line, Rita, because I've got another question for you. Earlier we talked about, I think IQMFD, that word was thrown out there. What is the IQMFD?
Well, the IQMFD is a system for tracking issues and concerns within the division. And so.
And it's not a gotcha type program. It's a place where we can also put in positive things that have happened there. Anyone can put in, you have the access to IQMFD, you could put in something positive that's happened within an agency or with a service coordinator or whatever. But it's a place where we track and we can put in there that something has happened and that we need to take another look at it. So none of us forget, because Lord knows we're all very busy individuals, daily, weekly, monthly, hourly, by the minute sometimes. So it's just an area of tracking and reminding that this needs to be looked at and that there need to be some revisions possibly made or some additions made or some changes made, either within that individual's environment or within their plan, possibly in their day program, possibly in how the individual is transported. So it's really not to be looked at as a gotcha or as a reprimand. It's looked at to be a learning tool and an opportunity to seek change.
That's great additions, Kay. And the other thing we need to kind of mention is that it's part of the Medicaid assurances that are outlined for us to track issues and concerns. So like Kay said, it's just a process.
And talking about that, thinking about that process, this next question is for you, Lucas. And Rita, you showed it in the PowerPoint, but the question is, why does it take so long when I ask to come?
Yep, that's a great question. So as Rita indicated, there are certain situations that kind of get you bumped to the top of the list. And one of those is when there's a prohibited practice used. And so one of our obligations as a state team is that we've assured the federal government that when those things happen, we drop everything and focus on those. And so it just so happens to be the case that currently we are addressing several of those situations. And so other folks have gotten kind of bumped down, unfortunately. One positive thing related to that is we are actually adding a new session today. So we'll have 3 total sessions in the month to increase our capacity. So so there's a couple things that are inherent in the question. So one, when people say, why does it take so long? That means that it takes a long time. And for that, I agree. I think you're right. I think it takes too long when people want to come and we need to provide help. But the other thing that I want to point out is one thing that you might see is when you ask to come, you get responses from us with suggestions for things to do in the meantime while we try to fit you into the committee. As the committee is highly focused on those people that are having the highest risk outcomes, we have to prioritize based on who has the greatest need, which doesn't feel very good if you're the person asking to come and from your perspective, you have a great need and you absolutely do have a great need, and there just happens to be 20 other people that have a similar great need. And so we do recognize that it's a problem. We are doing our best to make the problem less of a problem, and that includes adding an additional meeting every single month. And the hope is that in the near future, we'll have an additional one beyond that, so that we'll have 4 meetings in a month's time period. We're not quite there yet. We're going to make sure we can get the 3rd one up and running well. So that's one thing that we're doing to increase capacity. The other thing that we're doing is we're making sure that you are aware when you ask to come what other resources we have that may be helpful. So I think between those 2 things, we should seem more responsive, and you may actually have your problems solved a little bit faster. So that's the best answer that I have. I understand that may not be a satisfactory answer, and it is where we're at right now, and we're always aiming to improve.
All right, thank you, Lucas. So the next question, I think, Rita, you may have a little more information on this. Rita Kay, what if we need to reschedule? How do we reschedule?
Well, Rod, you're getting into the real nuts and bolts of how we operate. To reschedule, you reach out to the area behavior analyst that has requested that you come. You call, you email, you see what options there are in regards to rescheduling. And of course, we'd always like to know the why of the reschedule. Is it you couldn't get a component team member to be there? Or is it that, the guardian is the parent and the parent works and they'd like to adjust the time a little bit to their schedule so that they can attend because they want to have the input for their son or daughter, and they are really involved in that person's care. And we relish the fact that guardians are involved and that they are committed to their son or daughter to ask for something different in the way of a time frame to attend the meeting. Hey, do you have anything else you could add to that?
I really don't, Rita. It's just important, again, to communicate it as early as you can that you may have a conflict or an issue with the time that has been selected for your team to come to committee. Rod, back to you.
All right. I think that brings up another good question that I see. People want to know who's on the committee.
Well, the committee is made up of the area behavior analyst, which would be Rita Cooper and Melantha Witherspoon, and currently Lucas Evans, who has moved on, but there will be someone coming in his place. And then we have our intensive system consultants, Rod, Robert, and Kay, and volunteers from educational institutions and community settings who are certified in applied behavior analysts or working towards that BCBA or BCABA certification under a licensed behavior analyst. Those are our primary committee members. Rita, can you think of any other committee members that we have had or will maybe have in the future?
No, not at this point. You know, the committee is, of course, an open forum, so anyone can attend to get information about how we operate. The only requirement is that you must meet confidentiality and agree to that, that what is said in that meeting stays in that meeting. But we often like to have people just attend so they understand what the process looks like. They may want to get an understanding before they come so that they can be a little more prepared for what it looks like and feels like.
And how would they ask to come? Would that be through an email to the area behavior analyst in the region? That'd be the best way?
That would be a great way. Or again, on our website, we do have the links for our meetings and the times, identifying when they occur. So people sometimes just pop in.
Awesome.
And so that kind of makes me think of a question Fred asked earlier. And Melantha, I know you definitely can speak to this. So do LBAs and students have the option to observe the review process for learning purposes?
Absolutely. As long as they remain HIPAA compliant, everyone is welcome to sit in and observe the process. It is definitely a great learning opportunity. So yes.
Thank you. And so kind of a general question, and Rita and Kay, I'm going to throw this one to you. Some people think, you know, this sounds great, but really, how can it benefit my agency?
Hey, Rod, thanks. It took me a minute there to unmute, so I appreciate that. You know, there are many elements within the committee that can benefit the team. You know, we look at ensuring that we've got, you know, that we're looking at the plan supports, that we're developing the effectiveness of the behavior services, that we're offering consultation and problem solving assistance. You know, sometimes people get stuck in the forest and can't find their way out, or, you know, I like to say, gosh, you got down a rabbit hole, and we're here to say, let me give you a helping hand. So the idea is to, you know, really address the team and give them the support and identify resources for them. Kay, do you want to add to that?
I think you pretty much covered it there, Rita. You know, I mean, I think there's several benefits. Again, as Rita said, just being able to come there and express and let us know and let everyone know what's going on. Sometimes it's very empowering for parents to come there and to speak and to ask questions. Again, it's an informational place. It's a learning place. It's a safe place. So just knowing that there again, it's not a gotcha. It's a learning experience for everyone. We learn from you guys all the time, all the time. So yeah, great question.
Yeah, and I really want to hit this next question because I think some other people will be asking it too, and I believe this will also be in the materials that will be sent out. But the question is, finding the website, it's kind of tricky sometimes. Where is the website? Is it embedded in DMH or is it located somewhere else? How can I access that easily? And I guess that would be to all panelists.
Well, Rod, this is Rita. I'll be the brave one. You know, within DMH, the easiest way to get to what we do, not only the tier 3 team here, but also all of the tiered support services, is to type in your search engine, whether it's Google or Yahoo or whatever, DMH, DMH tiered supports, and that'll get you to our tiered support webpage. And then you'll be able to access the tier 1 information, the tier 2 and the tier 3 information. And all of what we're discussing today will be under that tier 2 box in the, and I'm trying to envision what it looks like. The tier 3 box, and you click on that and it'll take you to the elements that we're talking about today. We have just finished up the manual and we'll get that on there. We also will have the checklist that we use for the behavior support plans on there. And then as we finish up today, we'll culminate all the responses and questions that have occurred and have that as an FAQ on the website. It also links you to training. So if anyone is interested in the trainings associated with the safety crisis plans that we've talked about, that there are links there in our tier 3 part of the tiered support site on the DMH web page.
I see. Do we have a time for another question?
You know what? I think we're gonna kind of wrap this up, but if it's a short one, we'll get it in there, Rod.
Sure, and this is just speaks to the function of the committee. It says, in my area of the state, more individuals are moving out of the urban area into the rural area because of a lower cost of living. With this, we have individuals with intellectual disability as well as mental illness. Can this committee address this?
You know, I understand the plight of moving from the cities to rural areas. You know, the way we can address some of the issues that a team might confront is to take a look at connecting folks with the other elements of our multi-tiered system. We have, positive support consultants who can help. We've got risk prevention consultants who can help. And of course, the intensive systems consultants can help. And we as a multi-tiered team can help to get elements in place that will really help the individual to be successful and to meet their goals of that greater independence and better quality of life. So, you know, that's the best answer we have now, is we can connect you to resources and to information.
And looking at, I think about that too, is what does a meaningful day look like for this individual coming out of a city area and moving into a more rural area? What will that meaningful day look like? What activities can be provided for that individual? Are there work opportunities? Are there volunteer opportunities? You know, what can be provided to keep that individual engaged? And maybe it's even, you know, within their own home that things are provided for them, or, you know, but just looking and reaching out, exploring. You know, maybe a community next to you has something that your community doesn't have. It's only a 5 or 10 or 15-minute drive. I know in rural areas of Missouri that may seem like a long ways, but typically it's not. So just, you know, being resourceful.
That's true, Kate. And sometimes thinking outside the box. You have to be a little creative in the process. And, you know, we can help you do that with the multi-tiered system supports that we have available. So that's about all we have time for. We will, of course, capture all of the chat that we've had, and then this will be recorded and available on the website. So we are pleased to be able to have joined you today. And our goal is to have periodic town meetings or town halls to field questions and to help support the community of providers, both residential, day program, everyone within the DMH, and the general community. So we appreciate your time and commitment to helping us out today with this informational meeting and town hall. So thanks very much, everyone, and have a great day.